So let's go quickly. So thank you very much for staying this long. I'm talking a little bit about like my lessons learned as a community contributor for the Jenkins X project, right? So I started as a very early adopter. When these guys announced the project, I just picked it up because I knew the guys. I knew kind of like what the idea and the vision for the project was. So I started quickly looking into it. My name is Mauricio Salatino. I am at Salaboy in Twitter, and I do work for a company called Camunda, and LearnGates does Kubernetes trading. So if you're interested in that, feel free to follow us in Twitter. So first lesson that I learned, at the moment that I started using Jenkins X, I realized that this involves a set of projects basically, and that's kind of like on the bleeding edge side of things, right? And it's very difficult to keep up with all the changes, and if you need to deal with all these projects and how they change and how everything breaks, it gets quite complicated. I started using Jenkins X because I wanted to build projects and products for Kubernetes. So Jenkins X helped me a lot on that front, but at the same time, it taught me a lot of lessons about how to build products and projects for Kubernetes, right? So if you're building something for Kubernetes, you will end up using these projects no matter what you're doing, right? Or you're going to reinvent your own. But if you don't want to reinvent your own, you're definitely going to be looking at these. And what I've learned from Jenkins X is that I can look at this open source project that is solving all these problems and gluing all these things together in order for me to understand how I should do that for my own projects. The same thing happened with MultiCloud, right? So I was working for a company that they were saying AWS first, AWS first, AWS first, and you always have that project manager that comes and tells you how much it will take to support Azure tomorrow. And you said, what? We're just going to work on AWS. Now you want me also to support Azure. Well, that's fine. I don't want to solve that problem. So again, looking into this open source project that is basically solving the same problem, I can just start making faster and faster decisions. Just learning and contributing with the open source project to enrich their capabilities, provide feedback, and also solve the same problems that I'm trying to solve for my own products. When I heard that they were joining the City Foundation, I think that was kind of like a big announcement for me at the beginning of this year, because I realized that all the time that I was spending the project was totally worth it, because they were not solving problems for their own product and just for their own company. They were just sharing all the solutions with other open source projects in order to make these solutions better. So for me, that was quite cool. And the other thing that you will find while going to the cloud is that you definitely need to start defining your practices, right? You need to have very, very well established practices in order to move faster, because now you're not dealing with a single release of your application, you are dealing with tons of different releases. And in the project that I was involved, we were like very, very, very small team, and we were in charge of 100+ repositories, right? Like the same things that James mentioned before. They have thousands of repositories now. How do you manage all the complexity of dealing with all these repositories and all this source code that is distributed around the place with 4 people? How do you do that? At the beginning, for people inside my company, that was completely impossible, right? But using these kind of tools, like, you can definitely go faster, because these tools basically work using conventions over configuration, right? And again, you look at the project, then you learn how they do things, and then you can just apply those things in your own projects, right? That, for me, that was a very, very, very big learning experience. So when we are talking about conventions over configuration, you will read about build packs, GitOps, and pipelines. Build packs is basically recognizing what the project is about, right? Understanding what the user wants to do with this project. In the case of Jenkins, every time that you import the project will be scanned based on the content of the repository. It will basically decorate that project with different files. In that case, basically, it's all about user experience. How do you try to solve the problem for the user before pushing the user to do a bunch of things? How can you do it automatically? How can you automate everything? And quick stats goes one step further. They allow you to create or add your own domain-specific things to your projects, right? So if you have different teams building services, you can create a quick start that allows you to, have all the dependencies that are required for the company to create a service, and then there you go. You just speed up the entire process, you automate everything there as well. GitOps, the same thing, depending on the kind of projects that you are building, right? Like if you are building something for Kubernetes where people can provide their own pieces, their own bits, you will always need environments, right? And in the way that it's solved inside Jenkins X, it does make sense for other products as well, right? So why to reinvent these mechanisms? In this case, what I'm showing in this slide is that you can have like a staging environment and a production environment in the standard way that Jenkins X provides that when you install it. And basically then if you want to make changes in a cluster, instead of changing the cluster, you just go and change the source code in that repository, and the component will sync the state of the repository that contains the configuration for that cluster and the real cluster that it's running. So you can take the same idea and use it in your project, or even better, you can just reuse the components that are doing that for Jenkins X. Are you coming in now? Default service pipelines, again, you can use the default one. If you use the default one, then you have all the repositories working in the same way and behaving in the same way. And if you're interested in these topics, I'm doing a webinar the 26th of November with the CloudBees guys. You need to register for that webinar. And basically what I'm doing there is a post-hello world example, where I take a monolith, split it into microservices, and show all the problems that you might find and how a real project will look like. So that's pretty much it. Thank you.